appreciate. And it goes back to
that.
Was this child able to do specific tasks? Did they crawl? Did they just sit and walk, or did they sit, crawl, and walk?
Yeah.
Because these are building blocks in terms of how a child develops and how a child grows. And it also has to do with emotional aspects.
Wow. I'm so excited and welcome.
Thank you for having me.
We are going to look at the 12, what I call 12 principles that guide educators in observing the learning development in children. And I suspect that you will have a lot to share in that from a parent perspective, but also as a human capital specialist, having experienced and witnessed and observed how we respond as human beings. I want to start by saying, for parents' sake, educators educate. They prepare subject, they have a lesson plan, they bring a concept to children work with it, and they write a test or whatever, and the teacher takes a step back and observe if learning is happening, if learning has taken place. Tell us something about that.
You're so right, because sometimes as parents we think learning only happens at schools. What happens at school is education. The teachers educate, and it's part of learning. So we need to look at learning holistically.
Yeah.
We need to take a holistic approach in terms of how we view learning. However, learning starts from the basics, which is at home.
Yeah.
The foundation of learning.
Oh my goodness.
It's basically set from a home environment. From babies, toddler stage, that's the developmental stage. So at home, there are specific things that we as a family and as parents, with extended families and everything, that we teach our children.
Yeah.
And our children, that forms part of their learning development when they move from nursery school, crèche, preschool, then they get to primary school, high school, tertiary level. So that's how learning develops. It's not only at school.
I've said that. I feel so excited because you're echoing what I have shared. We have shared even in workshops, of course. People get to remember that, by the way, learning happens all the time. Now, in school, educators have the subject matter. But it is their job to also observe if learning and development is happening. And I came across these principles that guide educators, right? Test scores are just one aspect of observing if the child is learning. But they also observe things and changes that are happening in children. And I want to bring the first principle. And I'm not saying we're going to cover all 12 of them, but we're going to begin to engage them and see how we get them as parents. The first principle says, all areas of development and learning are important. A teacher is looking at cognitive development, social and emotional balance, and motor skills development. What do you say when you hear that as a parent?
Like I've just said earlier in my statement, it's a gradual process.
Yeah.
So when a teacher looks at social, cognitive, all areas, it means that there are specific things that needed to happen. For example, when a baby starts crawling, they are developing their motor skills.
Yeah.
So it's very important that, the aviators will say to you, in order for a child or a person to be admitted as an aviator, their motor skills needs to be fully developed. And that's where it comes in. Was this child able to ride a bicycle?
Yeah.
That's very important. You developing your motor skills. So when a teacher looks at all those, that's why I said earlier that learning is holistic. We need to view it from a holistic perspective. Social, it means social interaction. What kind of relationships does this child have at home with parents, with siblings, with neighbors? Most of us who grew up in the townships were able to play with our next door neighbors and all that. So that's very important. It's important for social interaction. It's also important in terms of learning different languages. I always go back from where I come from, which is the township, from where I was raised, whereby you are able to learn different languages from other people. So you develop in specific
and nobody taught us those
and
things.
Nobody taught us that now I'm going to teach you how to speak Sesotho, Setswana, Zulu, and all that. You just learn from interacting with people. So that's very important, and that is what the teachers look at. And what is also important, remember at school you've got tests and assignments. At home, in a social environment, there are no tests. The tests are done through observing. You have to observe as a parent, how are your children developing? And it's not through a test. However, you need to know and understand that at a specific stage, my child needs to know that when they are at a specific age, when they reach a specific age, they need to know how to wash their socks. They need to know how to wash the cup. They need to know how to make their bed when they wake up in the morning. That's very important. So it's part of learning, and it's a gradual process that that's why we have grade from 000 to grade 12. I mean, when I think of it now, the things that I did in grade 12, I'm always ask myself, why did I have to do grade 3 and 4? It's because it's gradual steps. At each and every step, there are specific things that a child is learning and that they are being taught.
You are mentioning something very important. In the past episodes, I talk about the school being a bigger playground. When you talk motor skills and you're saying, do they know how to ride a bike? Even for a child that doesn't have a bicycle, their motor skills can be seen, especially the gross motor skills, can be seen in other places. Do they climb trees? Do they jump rope? All of those things. There are things that we did and we played outside and was just to strengthen all of that. And then you mentioned that these things can come up even at a career level. That, for instance, in aviation, they do check on all of that. But also, parents have been invited to schools when a teacher observes that the cognitive skills of this child is fine. Thinking care and the understanding of the subject is fine. But he doesn't know balance, or she doesn't know balance. And then the teacher asks, did this child crawl? And we think, what does crawling have to do with what's happening in the classroom as parents? What can you say to that?
That's so important. It's a very valid point that you mentioned, in that it links to the developmental stage of a child. Because it's how you hold a pen. It affects all those things, all those aspects of the learning, in terms of how are you going to hold a pen? How are you going to do specific? Can you start a task and finish it? It goes on up to tertiary. It goes up to career level, whereby when I give a specific person a task to do, are they going to see it up to completion? Are they able to see it up to completion? And it goes back to
that.
Was this child able to do specific tasks? Did they crawl? Did they just sit and walk, or did they sit, crawl, and walk? Because these are building blocks in terms of how a child develops and how a child grows. And it also has to do with emotional aspects, in terms of how do you deal with conflict as a child? Because it's not only how does a child deal with conflict at home with siblings? Because that will have a great impact in terms of how do they deal with conflict at a workplace. And that becomes and that's where now we start talking at career level and professional level. We talk about emotional intelligence. But it's something that is being built over a period of time.
Wow. Mamcy, you are making us realize that the role of observing the development can be done by us. or we are doing it, but we didn't know that it contributes to what is happening in school, but also it contributes. It's the same thing that the educators are looking at. Is your child developing accordingly? One other principle that I like in these 12 principles is that children develop best when they have secure relationships. Wow. What would you say to that?
Exactly. You are so right. Relationships they form part of our developmental stages. So if at all a child feels secure in their relationship, remember it always starts within the family.
Yeah.
And family might not necessarily mean mother, father, or anything. It can mean uncles, it can mean relatives, where the child lives. If a child has secure relationship with their parents, with their siblings, with their uncles and their aunts, especially with us in extended and African families, everybody forms part of that family.
Yes.
And those relationships are very crucial. In the olden days, when a child did something, they say, you know what, I'm going to call umalume or uncle to come and talk to this child, because relationships are very important. And especially within the South African environment, context, and I believe it's also universal.
Many.
So if a child has strong relationships with the people around them or around him or her, what happens is that they become secure. And their self-esteem, it gets to be developed in a better way. Because you realize that where a child have a low self-esteem, it goes back to the kind of relationships that they've had. It might have been abuse. It might have been children who were not embraced. Sometimes it's where children, because I have 2 children, it's where children, when they are siblings, where the parents begin to compare children with their siblings and all that, and that ruins the relationship. And
you destabilize
without even being aware, you are affecting or you are impacting on the self-esteem of the other sibling that you are comparing the other one to. So it's very important as parents that it's not just about getting along, but it's about how do I relate to my children and how do I treat my children when it comes to comparing them to other siblings, which is not right. And how do I do that? Yes, it's good to say, you know what, your sister or your brother is able to do this. However, you need to do it in an embracing way. If you do it in such a way that you are putting the other one down, it affects their self-esteem and their development as well, because they'll always live in the shade of the other child. So it's very important as parents that you look into all those. And you know what? Most of us as parents, like we always say, we're never taught how to be parents.
Of course, there's no booklet for that.
Automatically, by default, we make those comparisons to say, you're not like your sister, you're not like your brother, without realizing how we impact our children negatively in terms of how they're going to develop. Wow. So that's the one thing that I've learned as a parent.
And for me, it just comes to that conclusion that this is an empowering process. We're getting to understand how we can parent better, how we can impact or affect our children positively.
Yes.
The one last principle that I want us to wrestle with is experiences. Early experiences have profound effect on development and learning. Experiences that children have, in your engagement earlier, you mentioned environment where there are abuses, so how do those early experiences, maybe even general and good experiences, how do early experiences affect children? What would you say to that?
If a child grows in a thriving environment where the relationships are good, obviously the experiences are going to be very good in terms of how they're going to mature in the future. However, if a child grows in an environment maybe where they've been sort of abused, it might not only be in the home, even bullying at school, where they are not getting along with their friends, that affects the way they learn. It affects the kind of things that they are willing to go into. It's like somebody's been in a very bad or abusive relationship to say, you know what, I will never have a relationship again. So at the same time, this is how this happens with children. if children have had bad relationships, I'm glad that we touched on thriving relationships earlier and being secure and self-esteem. So this builds into the experiences and the maturity of a child, because a child will never want to try anything. They will never want to take risks, because they will always think back either of the good experiences or the bad experiences.
Yeah, and including in terms of a subject matter.
Yes.
If a subject matter was introduced earlier on in a bad way, that child will refuse to study that particular subject. Or if earlier on numbers were not introduced well to a child, they want to say, I don't like maths. Meanwhile, it's got doesn't have anything to do with now. It's got something to do with the earlier experience, right? And so when we know this, we can look back at what was this child's previous experience.
Yes.
The experience in relationships, the experience in his or her own home. And so as parents, when we are called by an educator to say, I want to see you in terms of SIPO or whoever, we shouldn't be afraid. We should be open to hear what could be the challenge. That's what you're saying.
Yes, definitely.
We can learn something, a thing or two, when we know what this child has moved through.
That's so true. That's so true, and you're on point there, because something like experience cannot be bought. It's something that it's a process. You need to go through some of the stages. You need to go through process. And without specific experiences that you've gone through, you'll never know how to handle things in the future. So that's so important. This is amazing. I'm really, I'm looking back now as a parent. Some of the mistakes that we've made, that I've made personally as a parent, and I always say, my kids have sharpened my parenting skills.
I'm a better person because of these people.
Them, in terms of how they question us, and you will be saying, but I never used to question my parents like that. But they are growing up under different environments, and they are learning new things that we never learned, and it's an experience.
I am so happy we've had this discussion, and it continues, and that is so important to like, comment, and subscribe on this program, because there is so much to unpack. There is so much to unpack for us as parents, and continue to learn. Thank you for visiting us.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me on this program. It was really inspiring. Thank you.
Thank you for watching. Please check the description box below for more information on the program and how to get hold of us. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to get updates on our future episodes.